When would you like us to kick off, Charlene? Should we start in a moment?
Yeah, let's kick off now. People will just continue to drop in.
Yeah, as they come in. Well, so welcome everybody to our exciting Media Hack Day. Very exciting to have everybody here. Thanks for giving up your Saturdays to spend some time with us, and we're very excited to hopefully give you some interesting insight into the world of technology, in the world of cloud, and the world of entertainment. So hopefully this is going to be an exciting session. We're going to go very, very quickly through some slides. Then we're going to give you a sort of a demo of like some of the stuff that we're doing and some of the things we are doing as EditShare with our partners AWS who've joined us today on the call. But we've also got a few other elements, and then we'll get into actually doing some coding and stuff. The rough agenda, you may have seen this already, but we're sort of going to kick things off this morning with a couple of just set the scene, set what we're going to be talking about, and then we're going to get hands-on with some real stuff in Amazon Web Services, where we will get you all set up with accounts in free accounts into AWS for the day, so you'll get full reign of being able to play with all the toys there. And we've got some workshops for you to work through, and we're ending, hoping to end around 4:30 today, with a lunch break in the middle. So before we go anywhere further, I just wanted to, we put together a little video from our CEO, Conrad. Conrad is based in the US and hence couldn't be here. It was rather early for him, and he's probably recovering from Thanksgiving and Black Friday. So probably recovering this morning, but we did want to capture a quick video. So I'm going to play that out now.
Hey, hello and welcome. Boy, we are so excited here at EditShare to be partnering with Coding Black Females in collaboration with AWS for today's Media Hack event. Let me introduce myself. My name is Conrad Clemson, and I'm the CEO at EditShare. I'll also just share with you guys as we kick off that, look, I'm a firm believer in organizational traditions, and one of my traditions is on Friday, it's Hawaiian shirt day for me. So I don't always dress this way, but I always dress this way on Fridays. And you know, values and team are very core to who I am as a leader and to who EditShare is as a company, and our culture and our strategy is really anchored on that. We believe at EditShare that our values inform our strategy and they really drive our behaviors. And as part of that, I personally and EditShare at large recognize the critical importance of creating a diverse and equitable and inclusive environment. Boy, our society is diverse. The community we operate in is diverse. Our clients are diverse. And it's important to us that we're able to reflect that diversity as well to make the right decisions and to impact our business and the community at large. You see, at EditShare, our business is built on storytelling. And we help our storytellers to amplify different kinds of stories and perspectives and narratives. That amplification can take on many different forms. It's really the result of a collective effort of our team. And for me, I will tell you, our commitment to diversity and inclusion is a cornerstone for our culture and who we are. You know, when I think about our commitment to diversity and inclusion here at EditShare, I start with myself and I start with my home. I'll share with you guys that, like many of you, I grew up as a techie and a coder. Turns out that my son sort of followed my footprints. He's a software engineer. And he went to one of the top engineering schools here in the United States, a school called Carnegie Mellon University. And when Daniel joined Carnegie Mellon as a freshman, roughly 20% of his class were women, 80% were men. And they had a new incoming dean who took a strong position on diversity and said, in the next 4 years, we're going to create an environment at Carnegie Mellon that is proportionally men and women. And over the course of 2 years, they went from 20% to 50%. And their belief at Carnegie Mellon is the student base is stronger, the community is stronger, and they're turning out better engineers because of that. And I think that's a great role model, and it's a role model that we can follow. You know, here at EditShare, we operate in 2 large geographies, one in out of Basingstoke in the UK, and the other one is here in Watertown, Massachusetts in the United States of America. And I will tell you that as a company and as a team and a community, we really struggled this spring as the Black Lives Matter movement took off here in the United States. And we felt really, really compelled to be a part of that and to understand the positives and negative impacts that that was having on our community and on our clients. See, I believe that at EditShare, we understand how important it is to amplify the diverse voices in our community. We just recently celebrated Black History Month in the UK. During that celebration, we tried to take a broad cross-section at the meeting of the movement and what we can do to drive forward in equity and inclusiveness. We tried to amplify the voices of different leaders. Boy, Jennifer Ashton, who's with you guys and part of launching us here, wrote a great blog about her experiences in relation to diversity and inclusion. And we've tried to pick on charities and initiatives in communities supporting Black-owned food businesses in the US and the UK. Our CTO did a great collaboration with a filmmaker out of Tanzania. It's a great movie. It just launched on Netflix. But you know, I think one of my favorites was a Jollof rice challenge that we did, where we challenged our employees to cook this really cool African dish. I'll share with you guys. Mine didn't turn out too well. But the point is as a company, we really place a strong value in supporting and engaging across a diverse environment. And we do that because it broadens our viewpoints. It helps us make better decisions. And quite frankly, we want to make a positive impact on the communities that we're operating in. Now, look, I know a lot of you attending today are based in the UK and you identify as underrepresented communities in tech. I want to acknowledge that I know that's a harder road to walk down, and those of us in the community, and look, here I speak for EditShare, but quite frankly, a lot of the technology companies here in the US and in Europe, that is a great journey that you're going on, and we'd like to be a part of that and support you on that journey as well. And I think events like today are a great way for us to get to know each other, to do some pretty cool stuff together. And quite frankly, hopefully we have some fun doing it. So look, thank you. It's really great that you're welcoming both EditShare and AWS in as an ally. And I really hope you enjoy the MediaHack event today. And with that, I'm going to pass this over to Stephen Talami, who's going to take you through the agenda today.
Great. So hopefully that was useful to hear from, from Conrad, and appreciate him, putting together that video for us. So what is EditShare about, and why are we here, and what do we do? Because you probably may not have heard of EditShare until you had an invite. So I really appreciate so many people actually turning up on some company they maybe haven't really heard about AWS. But maybe not about us. And what we're really trying to do is simplify storytelling. I think Conrad mentioned that in his video. That's really what we're here to do, is to help people who have a story to tell, do it in a more collaborative way. And that's really important to us. But I think the best stories that get out there are those that have a diverse, different opinion and have different people collaborating and working together. And so we've always been about that. We're about people collaborating to tell stories with the medium of video. And we have a lot of customers around the world. Here's just a selection of some of. We have thousands of people who use our systems. So from in the UK, you may well know, programs like Love Island and so on. They use our systems to connect to, when they're recording on the island, they'll take our systems to record all of the things that are coming off all the cameras. They'll use it for then preparing all of the things to be edited on the island, and then they get shipped back for further finishing when they come back to the UK or to wherever the hosting country is. So that's an example of one of the companies we work with. But you'll see some other pretty big names here, Apple, Ubisoft, even NASA use it. And we have a lot of work with universities as well. We're really keen to be involved. We've got Bournemouth University there. They have a massive media program. We've just recently installed at the National Film and Television School, where a large number of talent from across the UK is trained. So it's really exciting to have a really global presence and be working with all of these different companies around the world. And what we make is really two key things. One thing is storage, and storage might seem maybe a bit of a boring topic, but actually it's really, really important. You'll see in a minute why. When you're dealing with very high resolution videos, so we more and more see people going beyond HD into 4K and into much higher resolution videos. That creates a lot of data. And you can't just store it on your laptop anymore. You can't just store it on just a simple external drive. You need to have absolutely terabytes of it to make a film, to make a documentary, to make anything. And so that starts to become a real problem. And so we have a solution that helps manage all of that media for people and allow people to share it and collaborate around it. That's our EFS platform, EFS standing EditShare file system. The other product we have is Flow, and this is an asset manager. And again, when you have hundreds of thousands of different assets and lots of material coming together for a film, for a TV show, you need something to manage it so that you can find where things are, you can search, you can look for it. And there's no use just having a file system in that use case, because usually the files have really weird names and just come off camera cards. So having something that can index all those things and make it easy for you to manage with it and integrate with the different editing software like Adobe Premiere, Avid Media Composer, DaVinci Resolve. We have our own editing platform in Flow Story. So being able to interact with those applications so that anyone who's actually editing the video has a really easy experience doing so. And what we've been doing over the last few years is making some of this available in our cloud platform, which is called EFSV, V being the virtualized part of it. I'm just going to hand over maybe to Matt, who's going to talk a little bit about some of the technology that we've been working on as we've tried to bring this world of production into the world of AWS. So Matt, do you want to?
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Yeah, morning, everyone. Yeah, I'm just going to give you a quick high-level view of our EFSV product, which, as Stephen said, it enables collaborative media workflows with Amazon, AWS, and EditShare at the core. So I'm just going to follow through some of the boxes in the slide. So we start off with the Windows workstations, which connect to the EditShare EFS storage. And AWS offer a wide range of workstation specs, and to buy off-the-shelf hardware which is capable of editing 8K, 4K is a huge upfront investment, and virtualization like this means that we can give access to anyone from anywhere without the need of a powerful machine. You can use a standard desktop or laptop to remote into these really powerful workstations. And then we've got our Flow media management layer, which sits over the top, which provides applications to manage media, such as tagging, searching, uploading, and logging. And we'll move into a demo in a bit, and you can see it in action. Then we've got a couple of different storage layers. You've got the Amazon EBS storage, which is block storage, which is more like your traditional hard disk in your laptop, so it's fast and easily accessible. And then we've got the Amazon S3 storage, which is object storage, which is typically a lot slower and more difficult to access. It's not like a regular file system. But it's safer, and it's importantly a lot cheaper in the cloud. And our EFS storage runs over the top of these different storage, underlying storage subsystems, and it provides a very high performance, shared, redundant file system, which allows the Windows workstations to mount and access the media. And then the users on the Windows workstations can run their favorite kind of applications, as Stephen said, sort of Adobe Premiere, DaVinci Resolve, and Avid, to edit programs. And these editing applications typically work with very high resolution media, so they require very high performance from the storage. And then on the right hand side, we've got remote users can using our Flow applications, can upload media from anywhere and collaborate on the production, again, from anywhere. And as you'll see in the next slide, object storage is far cheaper than block storage, and it's important to manage media locations and life cycles, and Flow helps you do this. So you can set up rules about moving media between the different storage tiers that are available. One example is moving media from for completed programs to S3 to save money, and then you can later retrieve it as you need it. So Stephen, can you move on to the next slide?
Yeah,
So,
I think the next slide, yeah.
Yeah, thanks. So here we have some examples of the cost of storage and the savings that can be made keeping data in object storage rather than block storage. So you see we have the term shooting ratio, which is the number of hours that you shoot for every hour that makes it into the final program. Non-fiction programs typically shoot a lot more material than ends up in the final program. So as you can see, 100 to 1, 200 to 1 for feature films is not uncommon, which means there's a lot of media, especially at high resolutions. This highlights the importance of media management. So our Flow product is tools that allow you to do things like create low resolution versions. We call them proxies. So you can then move the high resolution media to object storage as soon as possible to save money. You can then make edit decisions using the proxy versions and only copy the high res back at the end to finish the program. So I think we're going to move to a sort of demo now, Stephen, are we?
Yes, we are. Let's see some of it in action, because I think that might be a bit hard to really fully embrace until you actually see it. Let's get to the demo. So first off, I think I'm going to start over here. So we're going to spend quite a bit of our day today in the Amazon Web Services console. So when you get logged in late in a little bit, you'll be spending some time in this environment. And so I'm just going to show you kind of what we have, a little demonstration of some of our software running in AWS and what that means and what some of these S3 things are that we've done to try to reduce the cost of actually doing video editing in the cloud, because there's a lot of advantages to it, as Matt said, being able to have a very powerful workstation. These ones have really high powered GPU inside them, these G4 DNs, and then they can go up to many CPUs and memory. We've got a relatively modest one, but these can go up to really large sizes, and you can choose how you want to use them over time. And one of the flexibilities you've got is, you could start with a lower powered instance, pay less for it, and then when you really need to get into the high end finishing, you can change the instance types, and that's a great amount of flexibility. You couldn't do that with a normal laptop. You just would have had to have bought a high spec MacBook or a high spec Windows machine or something to do this type of editing. So there's a lot of flexibility to use these things as you want. So these are the two things that I've got running here. One of them is something with all of the EditShare software. We call it an all-in-one. So it's got everything that we make in one place. Normally we would split those out over many different machines, but for this demo, we've got it all on one thing. And then, as I say, we've got a Windows workstation. It's totally virtualized and it's running in the cloud. We talk a little bit about storage. So storage is part of our solution. And we tend to organize things in what we call these media spaces. So a media space is just a place where someone's going to put their stuff for a different project. So you can have many different projects running simultaneously. In a TV show, it might be you have a project per episode. You might have a project that's a place where you put all of your rushes, which are your raw files that come in from all the different shoots that you've got. And then you might have another one where you've actually got some of your finished material. Gives people a lot of flexibility to cut up this very large amount of storage. As you saw on that slide that Matt presented, there's terabytes and terabytes of storage, often up to petabytes once you actually get to an end of a project. So you can get a really large amount of storage. And so we actually manage all of that storage very simply through our web-based tools. So you can create new storage spaces. You can say which users or groups of people are going to have access to that storage. And one of the interesting things that we mentioned is that we can have that storage go across different types of things. So there's this thing called a block storage. So if we actually take a look at these virtual machines here, this one here, it has some block storage attached to it. Let's just click that again. So it has an amount of block storage attached to it. So you can see we've attached not a lot of storage actually, but different volumes that we've put onto this machine. These could be terabytes and terabytes of onboard storage, and that's what's known as block storage, EBS based storage, elastic block store. But there is also another type of one that Matt mentioned, which is S3 storage. And so this is a much more object-based. You put things in with keys, a key. So a path actually is just a key. And then the value will be the blob of data. So we've got a whole blobs of data, lots and lots of different video files that we've put into this object storage. But traditionally, editing applications like Adobe, Avid, etc., can't necessarily talk directly to this storage. And this is where we've made accessible this storage through our file system. And so I'm going to use a remote desktoping tool. So actually, I'm actually running on a Mac here. But I'm actually connected in over a remote desktop here. So this is now me connecting to that remote Windows machine that we saw earlier, actually in the cloud environment. So all of the processing power is happening in the cloud. I've mounted some of those storage locations that I just showed you onto this machine. So they actually look like just a network attached drive. So I've got this one here, and this is actually me browsing that S3 bucket. So all those files we were just looking at, that was me actually mounting them as a regular file on this file system, which is really useful. It means that I've now got access to a whole load of media that I can start editing with in any different application. And you can see in the background here, I've actually got Adobe Premiere up and running. And what you'll see on the left-hand side, this is our Adobe panel. So this is all built using web-based technologies. So this is all Node.js and Vue.js for the sort of front-end technology. And it's all built into the Adobe experience. So it's really cool if you're learning those tools. That sort of tool chain doesn't necessarily have to be Vue.js, but the web technologies. It's amazing that now you can actually be integrating an entire user experience into a third-party application. This is, Adobe Premiere is one of the main editors that many people use to edit, or most people who are editing for YouTube videos use Adobe Premiere, and in the professional industry as well. Large numbers of people have moved from maybe the Avid environment into Adobe Premiere. The whole of Terminator, the most recent one, was completely edited in this environment. So it's really quite exciting to be able to use simple web-based technologies and integrate them into one of these applications. And so here we're browsing all the media that was on that, but now we can actually see thumbnails of things. So if I go into any of these things, I can actually look in more detail about what is this asset, what is this video. I can preview it in the browser in this environment before I import it. If I have, we can put markers on it, and we can say, like, this is a good shot, this is a blurry shot. This might seem blurry, but actually maybe it's artistic. That's why someone might have shot it this way. And so you can browse everything that's there, that's available. You can search if you're looking for particular types of media in the environment. So maybe I look for some, actually maybe that wasn't the one I want to do, like sports or something. We would find that type of data, but we can then import the material. So if I find something I like, maybe I like this other shot of the London Bridge that's going to go in my environment, I can easily import it. And this is where Matt mentioned a little bit about proxies. So a proxy is just basically the same video, but in a lower resolution. And why that's useful or important in this particular case is that with the high resolution being on S3, there's one small problem, and that's that S3 has some latency issues. It's hard to read the data fast enough for me to be able to move back and forwards through an editing timeline like I'm doing over here on the right hand side. That actually can be a bit of a challenge going from S3 because it has this latency, a latency being the amount of time it takes to read the first few bytes of the file. Once you get going, it's okay, but it can be a problem. And as you can imagine, in a video editing application, you're starting and stopping lots and lots of different files over time. And so what we do is we put this proxy version back on that block storage, the EBS storage, so that we know that we can get the throughput we need, but we keep the high resolution in the S3 bucket, and we can always look at it if we want to, because it is still mountable. It's still stuff on the machine. So you can see I've imported that media now, and I can bring it into my timeline. I can start editing with it. And one of the nice features that Adobe has is this ability to toggle between the proxy format and the high resolution format. So if I think that this shot maybe looks a bit blurry, it's maybe unclear, whether this sort of is in focus and I actually want to see the high resolution, I can hit this toggle button, hit play, and hopefully you'll see that it's hard to see over Zoom, but suddenly it becomes more crisp. The proxy isn't so obvious, because when you take a video and you compress it, you probably may have noticed this on, if you have low bandwidth somewhere, it starts to look a bit rubbish, it sort of starts pixelating. And so being able to get back to that high resolution footage is really useful for me. But the problem is that I will have some latency. So then I can carry on with my normal editing in this proxy mode as I wish. And then I've always got that ability to toggle back to the high resolution. And this is really useful when I come to render this out. If I want to actually render and share this out with others, then that's also possible. I know that we're almost out of time, and I really want to hand over to the AWS team, but I just wanted to show a couple of other things in our world that we've put into this cloud environment. One of them was, when we noticed a lot of people were using Zoom like we are now, they were using it actually to create content. And you may have seen content that's been put on television or put online in various places, actually recorded using Zoom technology. And so we wanted to really make it easy for people to import that type of media also into this environment. And so this is a little microservice, again, all Node.js based service that actually connects into my Zoom account. So this is me doing a little demonstration of some technology that we had internally. I recorded it. It's available in my Zoom account, and I can select to import it into my storage place. And in the background, this will import this media, but it will also import all of the other parts of that Zoom recording, which can be quite useful. So if we look over here in my Zoom spaces here, maybe let's have a look at my meeting room. So also, as well as importing both the video of my recording, I've also imported a lot of other information about the meeting, whose meeting room it was, where they were, and also any markers. So this has actually got the transcription inside of it. This has got the chat. If somebody types in the chat, it's imported all of that data and brought it into the environment so it can be used for editing. And this can be really useful. We've got one of our customers in the US who's actually using this to put together educational content, and they have somebody on the Zoom call who's presenting from their home, creating doing a regular lecture with slides and all those kind of things. And then they also have someone joining the same Zoom as a sort of like a producer who might put in notes about, if there's an error or there's something that the person who's going to actually do the editing needs to know about. They can add those in as chat markers in the world of Zoom. And then when it comes into our world, we can import it. You can import all that information, and then someone can use that to edit inside of, inside of Adobe Premiere or inside of one of the other tools as well. So they get all of that data and all that information into the system. So that's a really fast demo of what we do, and some of the sort of exciting things that we see as we go into a cloud environment, how easy it is for us to add these features and scale up our system and make it available to people who want to work on video editing around the world. But I would like to now hand over to Niall, who's joining us. So Niall is one of our partner managers over at AWS. And so he's very kindly agreed to come and have a quick chat with us. And I think he has a special guest with him as well. So over to you, Niall.
Let me unmute. Yeah. So I'm now trying to figure out how I share. Let's try this one. You're kidding me. Hang on. This always happens, doesn't it? I now have you have to grant access in.
Are you running on the latest on a Mac by any chance?
I am, and I am not quitting the app to do this. So let's see if this works.
I think it does.
Oh, it looks like it does. Thank God for that. Right. Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Well, I'm sure you're all really excited to have another middle-aged white man talk to you. So the good news is I've brought along someone much more inspiring than me, which is Sinead Greenway, who we're going to chat to in a moment. And when I was asked to do this, I was actually asked to talk about media and entertainment and AWS. And I thought that might actually be a bit boring. I thought if I was in your position, I probably want to know a little bit more about AWS and media and entertainment and how it related to me as an individual. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the cultural aspects of AWS, a little bit about media and entertainment, and then move to Sinead. And we had a moment earlier this year where I felt proud actually to be part of AWS and Amazon, and as quite an aging, cynical person, that doesn't happen very often. And it's related to it was earlier this year when in the aftermath of the George Floyd protests, where Jeff Bezos, who's founder and leader of Amazon and AWS within that, made a very big play around that Amazon.com was very public in its support of the Black Lives Matter message. And he shared some of the responses he got on his Instagram page. And I can say this is probably the only time ever I will put this type of image on the presentation, which is, this is an example of something he got, which is just overtly racist. And we as an organization talk a lot about customers, and customer obsession is one of the things which we endlessly talk about. And what I was really pleased with here is that has a limit. So for Jeff to basically say, I am happy to fire you as the customer when you say things like that, I thought was very, it made me feel good to be working in this type of company. I was also pleased the way he dealt with a less overtly racist remark, which was on the All Lives Matter messaging. And his response there, which is he's got a 20-year-old son, he doesn't have to worry about him being choked to death. Interestingly, that resonated in my family. So my son is 15 years old, the product of two sun-avoiding Irish people. He's very, very pale. And he couldn't understand how this could happen. He's a kid who grows up in North London, very, very diverse area. And the thing that shocked him was that his friends could be treated differently and very aggressively differently just because of the color of their skin. And he felt very angry about that. I think the important point there is what impressed me about what Jeff did is that he did something. Now, he's not a saint. I don't want to overplay what he did, but he did the right thing. And as someone who works in that sort of organization, that was important because leadership comes from the top, obviously, and the behaviors that we have are set by our leadership team. There was another thing which did slightly surprise me about what Jeff did, which is that generally speaking, Amazon and AWS, we don't make grand statements, and certainly not when it comes to political messages. We encourage people to do things ourselves. And so, for example, within Amazon, we don't make grand statements. We don't believe in tokenism. We believe in people organizing and doing things themselves. And so, for example, we have what we call Affinity Groups, and these are organizations that the company backs and supports, but lets basically us run. And it is telling us to use these organizations to do things, to change behavior. These are the ones we have at the moment. Two of the biggest ones actually are the Black Employee Network. Also, interestingly, Warriors at Amazon, which is people who've served in the military. And one of our areas of focus is on helping people who've returned from service and helping them get back into the workforce. But it's also in areas that, like the top one, is for people with disabilities. And then, the more innocuous ones, which is families, because everyone on the call, I've heard the number of children in the background. All of us have to deal with families, and particularly in this time. And so it's a good example, again, of within AWS of how we focus on us and behavior. And all of it's driven by what we call the leadership principles. And this is something that you can Google it. It's the 14 leadership principles of Amazon. I'm not going to go through all 14 of them. Customer obsession is the top one, and we can basically group them into who we are. So we as individuals, we are people who think big, who have a very strong bias for action, and who are naturally curious about things. And there are things in how we do it, so we're encouraged to take ownership. When it comes to people, very strong focus on hiring and developing the best. You know, one of the reasons why AWS is very keen to support this is we want more talent. And there is talent out here in this audience today. And then it relates to kind of what we do, which is predominantly about delivering results. And when I first joined Amazon, in fact, in the interview process, I was asking, like, how important are these like leadership principles? Is this like just words? And then, you know, as soon as you join, it's sweating you. And having been here for over 3 years, these things are incredibly important to us. So they affect our promotions, they affect our peer review, they affect, actually, believe it or not, our daily meetings. Sometimes we go too far, sometimes we actually use them as verbs, which we'll say, you know, you really need to show a bit more bias for action there. But they inform everything we do, and they're all about behavior. And that aspect on behavior has impacted how we look at diversity and inclusion. And in fact, we're increasingly talking more about inclusion, I would say, than diversity. And the reason for that is, I think, when we talk about diversity, we end up talking about numbers and metrics and percentages, and we're not really talking about behavior. And it's important to keep that, but inclusion tends to be more about behavior. And in every conversation we have internally about inclusion, the word that always comes up, usually at the beginning, is respect. And it's about respecting other people. And that's, I think, how behavior gets changed, which is when you put yourself in the mind of other people, rather than feeling that you are obliged to change a metric or to improve a metric. So it sounds great. We must have amazing stats on diversity. And actually, when you look at our stats, we have room for improvement quite a bit. So we released these figures. We started doing this about 5 years ago. The top two circles relate to Amazon globally, and that includes AWS. The bottom ones, where we break down by race and ethnicity, are just for the US, where they have better data collecting. And if we look at this, the gender bias is looking better. I wouldn't say it's brilliant. And certainly North America, our diversity mix is good. But the real kind of key message of a company, I think, is more to do with the leadership within it. And this, I think, highlights that we have some ways to go. So we are probably above industry average on representation of women. But if you look at the bottom one, where we've got a quarter of the workforce in North America, which is Black African American, yet less than 10% in a management position. And that, I think, is the area that we need to focus on and grow and make sure that there's better representation there. So we acknowledge we have a lot of work to do there. Now, this isn't possibly as bad as it looks, because AWS in particular tends to hire internally. So once people come in, we tend to focus on them as managers, because we want people who really understand the culture to lead here. So we do relatively less external hiring. So I do suspect that this is actually a timing effect, and that as we have grown the diversity of our base, we will see more managers. But I can tell you, as someone who is a hiring manager, one of our top priorities is making sure that we are being as inclusive as possible when we do this. And that's not a numbers game. It's because we genuinely want the best talent out there. Now, if I look at the media and entertainment space, it's actually not that much better. In fact, I struggled to think of any Black female CTOs in any media company. Probably one of the most prominent people in our industry, which was Sharon White, the head of the regulator, who's now left to go to John Lewis, highlighted actually we have a real issue with diversity, which she referred to as being woeful. And sometimes it can look bad. You know, I found this picture of one of our May trade shows where it's a bit like Where's Wally in terms of finding the person who isn't a middle-aged white man. And it can seem when you look at it this way, that we're not strong. But one of the interesting things about media is the people it attracts, because it's a new industry, tend to be adventurers. And so that may be a snapshot in one particular area. But if I think of people in this industry, and this is true, no matter, someone kind of sitting on a desk doing some admin work, the industry we're in has an impact. It affects people. And I think we do see ourselves as these people who are kind of climbing mountains. And actually, it tends to just focus on who's willing to step up to do that rather than putting them in a category. And so if I think of, for example, two of the most prominent foreign correspondents I can think of, actually both of them are women. There's Orla Gerwin, possibly I think of her because she's Irish, and Marie Colvin, who unfortunately paid with her life for that sense of adventure, who died when covering the conflict in Syria. But what binds all of us in that is that we all have this bias for action. We all want to do things. And when I talk to people about joining AWS, the messaging I say to them is pretty much exactly the same as I would say to anyone who wants to join the media industry, which is, first and foremost, you've got to deliver your objectives. And our leadership principle now would be deliver results. And that's common to a lot. But the things that are different is you have to build your network, because things happen really quickly. It's an exciting industry. And as a result of that, it's down to how good you are connecting with other people. People here will want to help you, but you just need to be respectful of their time. And so it's about being precise and concise. But earning trust is one of the greatest things that will further your career in this industry. And it's this last one sounds like an odd one, which is your development is your responsibility. Now that sounds like a very uncaring thing to do, but actually what it's saying is just take ownership, because we like to say there aren't really any barriers to you. No one's going to do something for you, but no one's going to stop you. And that is why I think if I was in your position, I would be looking for the organizations that reflect those values, and those are going to be the ones that focus on innovation. Because in innovation, we don't care about who you are, where you're from. We want talent, and we want the best. And we're not going to look at background, race, gender, or other those factors in wanting to get the best. And I think one of the people who, for me, encapsulates a lot of these values is Sinead Greenway, who is the CTOO of UK TV. Sinead, are you?
I'm here.
Excellent. How does this work? Right, so Sinead, first of all, do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and your career in media?
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me along. This looks super exciting. I have a very unconventional path, I think it's fair to say. So I'm not a computer scientist. I bow to all of the ladies on this call, because I'm sure they'll be much brighter and more capable actually than me. So they'll go far. So I echo these sort of North London Irish off the boat. My parents did, like a lot of Irish people, came over in the sort of 60s. We had a strange path in that they became, so we lived in North London and then they became housekeepers in Chelsea. So I'm a sort of below stairs person, which gave me this immense sort of insight into what it feels like to be amongst a lot of wealth, and probably gave me a slightly better accent than I should be affording. So it was an odd time sort of growing up in privilege, but not having any of it. But I did all right, went to school, quite a good student up until sixth form, when my parents decided to send me to a boys' school. And I have to say that didn't work out very well. So rather than sort of taking up some lame uni offers, I thought I'd take a year out, maybe get myself a little job for a few months and see what happens. So I saw a job in the Evening Standard that said traffic and accounts assistant at a place called Kiss FM. I didn't know if I'd been a helicopter or, sitting in front of a spreadsheet, God knows. I borrowed my mum's dress and wore a pair of black DMs, went along to the interview, and never looked back. I spent 14 years in commercial radio, and as you can imagine, landing in Kiss FM, it had just stopped being a pirate radio station 1 month previous to my joining, and basically anyone who could work a computer in any way was seen as a technology giant. So I sort of grew. Traffic was actually organising the adverts. I then took on business systems in a sort of, oh, I've got a bit of an interest in that, it'd be quite useful to develop them. I also acquired myself a husband there. My husband, Bruno, is a rave promoter. So I did a bit of marketing and event stuff, as you do in a business that's not really very focused, shall we say. But 14 years later, left as the group operations director. So I had teams in every big city in the UK, all the big radio stations. I looked after, my role in technology was getting bigger. And I think it's fair to say I had quite a keen interest in workflow and process, which is something I know you share, Niall. And that was kind of the starting point. I then got approached about a job in Virgin Media Television, which at the time was multi-channel, just stopped being Flex Tech. It was part of the big Virgin Media Group. And again, I took on roles across the content and sales divisions. So still operations and technology, but at that stage, I started to acquire things like network infrastructure and service desk and lots of other sort of disciplines. We also did a big transformation project, which again, I think sort of is a strand that goes through my career, which is we became the first tapeless broadcaster. Now, to folk on this call, apart from probably you, me and Peter and the guys at EditShare, might not mean a lot, but in the olden days, you know, lots of broadcast was heavy engineering and physical stuff. So that was a really big deal for us. I then got approached about an even more bonkers job. And I love when people, you know, everyone here, people will talk to you about these big plans. Lots of my career was very accidental. And I think that's how life happens to most of us. Where I got asked to go up and be the chief exec at Media City. And actually, some of you guys will remember this. Media City was the new studios and BBC location for about 2,500 people, actually, from education, children's news. So really big shift for the BBC. And my job really was to finish the studios and get them working. So it was tech and operation. And really, I think I was chosen because I'm pretty good at getting stuff done. So our big test was actually putting out Match of the Day. It was a heart in mouth moment to watch that go out. In telly terms, it's really hard. It's got live bits, it's got studio bits, it's got pre-recorded bits. So actually doing something like that was amazing. And then at 40, I became a geriatric mum. That's what they call you when you have a baby at 40. So having said to hubby we wouldn't make our life in another city and we probably needed to get back to friends and family, I then hot-tailed it back to London with my daughter, who's now 8. So we'll come on to her in a bit. I took a job for a couple of years, another sort of slight sort of tangential career move. A friend of mine was expanding her consultancy and search business and growing it out to the States and trying to increase the disciplines. I didn't really like the search, although it's incredibly interesting placing chief execs at other businesses. There's a lot you learn across media and entertainment doing that. But actually part of the consultancy, I was asked to go and look at a business called UK TV, which had tech that was probably fit for purpose in a channels only world about 15 years ago. But they had a really big problem thinking about how do we then transform what we do for an on-demand world. And funnily enough, the most interested person in this transformation appeared to be me. And that's what I've been doing for the past 6 years.
So, Sinead, the one thing which I really want to ask you, and Stephen will be prodding me on time, but I think it's a very important question, is you have been in this industry talking about diversity for pretty much as long as I can remember, actually. Why are we still talking about this in 2020?
Well, I think you mentioned it yourself, you know, even thinking about who could come along and talk to this group, and it's a very short list. And whilst we're an immensely, I'll sort of do it from media and entertainment frame, whilst we're an immensely attractive industry, clearly, as we become more senior, you know, I often find myself as the girl at the conference or the exhibition that you showed, you know, I'm often in rooms where I am the only female, let alone the only person of any diversity. And we have, look, we've got tons better. Lots of production businesses are actually very female heavy. And as you say, you know, the events of this year have been just awful. You know, you think about what happened around George Floyd, but it's sent a tremor. And finally, every business, not just in media entertainment, I think has diversity and inclusion at its heart, or certainly are running big programs around this. And you know, for me, it's about leveling up. I echo your points. You know, I'm a board rep for our diversity and inclusion program, and yeah, great. Representation is incredibly important. And for full declaration, I am married to a black guy. I have a mixed chick daughter. And the very last thing I want for her is my experience. You know, I want her to walk into a room and recognize folk like her. That's how she's going to make a career decision in 20 years' time. And so it's my best hope that actually, you know, recognizing my white privilege, as tricky as it is being a female in this world, anything else is even more complex. So for her, you know, I want us to level up. I want everyone to feel like they've got the same opportunity. I want everyone to feel that we embrace difference. I think we've got a terrible tick in industry of acting like we're fixing people. And actually this is about behavior at its core. You know, we as leaders of businesses need to recognize that the best thing that can be happening in our room is we're looking at people who aren't like us, who have different ideas, and we love that. You know, I have really difficult meetings with my team. Other people find that quite shocking, and I'm like, well, that means we're actually challenging each other. That's a pretty good thing, isn't it?
I think we'll have to wrap up, but what I would ask you in closing is I guess, kind of what advice you'd have for this group, and specifically around how good a choice is tech.
Oh, so, I mean, I love it. I absolutely love it. And the confidence everyone here should have is you're probably far better qualified to do it than me. And I suppose that's my first message is don't feel you have to be good at everything. I used to feel that pressure and it really knocked my confidence that I'd sit in rooms with these incredibly bright people going, what the hell am I doing here? And of course, the value I bring is I am actually pretty good at workflow and supply chain, but keep things simple, you know, simple descriptions of solutions, lots of questions to get you to very simple language. Don't feel the pressure of having to know all the ologies and all these fancy words. Actually, business is about what you're delivering for the business and how you're pushing it forward. So I think there's something about not feeling the pressure, you know, and actually find the bits you like. Don't feel the pressure of doing the stuff you don't like. Your path will find itself. So I think there's tons of stuff in that.
Yeah, I completely echo that the very first part of that. One thing, just so everyone on the call is aware, we do a lot of research on what type of people respond to different types of job adverts. And it is definitely the case that when you put in like a list of 10 requirements in a job advert, women are more likely to look at that and only apply if they can do all 10 or 9.
Yeah.
Men will look at that list, and if they think they can do 1, they will apply. And as a result of that, we're actually changing the way we do job descriptions so that we want to make sure that we are attracting right at the outset. So it's not about being able to do everything, it's about being good at just some of those things. So Sinead, thank you very much for that.
You're very welcome.
And Stephen, apologies for going over, but back to you.
Oh, I'm always happy to go over, especially when we've got Sinead talking. So it's always great to. And so thanks very much for you both, for joining us today. We're going to take a very quick 10-minute break so everyone can go grab another drink. And so we will start again at 11. Let's do 11:35. It's not quite 10 minutes, but if everyone can come back 11:35 and to be ready, we'll get ourselves set up with accounts and things on AWS so that you all got the ability to get on with the exercises that we're going to be doing shortly after. So if everyone comes back at 11:35, that would be amazing stuff. See you in a minute. we'll get started in another minute or so. Okay, hopefully everyone had managed to grab a drink or take a quick stretch. There'll be plenty of more opportunities to do that as we get into the workshops as well. So I don't want to give everyone a quick stretch, but we will also be, you know, doing these workshops where you can kind of nip in and out, and that's totally fine as well. So what we're going to do now, we sort of jumped in and we sort of, I want to introduce a few people who else on the call today who's going to be helping us out as we get into the actual coding parts of this. And what we're trying to do here is it's just open your eyes to this additional world of technology that maybe you haven't dealt with. Maybe you've worked with AWS tools, maybe you haven't, but maybe you haven't thought about how that would apply to the world of, you know, media and image processing and all of the different things that you can do when you get things into a cloud environment, and lots of interesting things you can do with video. So we're hoping to kind of inspire you during these sessions to kind of think about those things and get hands-on, but maybe hands-on with some stuff that's sort of, we're going to walk through exercises and stuff where you can explore the world but have something concrete to be doing. And this is sort of, we hope, will be a starter for us to have an ongoing set of events. So we'd like to do some other events in the future where we actually do a bit more of free-for-all, you know, here's some APIs, here's some stuff, let's try create something of your own thinking. So we also, really today is sort of an inspiring session to kind of get you thinking about these things, and hopefully, as you know, we can get back into a slightly more normal world sometime next year, fingers crossed, we may be able to meet face to face and do some of those events where it's a bit more free form. So we've got a number of people who are helping us today. You heard from Niall from AWS. We've also got Chris Fain, Peter Heinbach, and Ra Kowalski on the call. So they are here from AWS to give help during the session. So what we're going to do eventually is we're going to break out into little breakout rooms, and we're going to run through some exercises, and they'll be on hand to help you, along with you saw Matt earlier. He is our Director of Technology in the video group. He'll be also here for technical support along with myself. Please use us to, you know, find out more about this area as well as doing the exercise. Just take time to chat to us. We'd love to sort of talk about what we do and also find out about what you do and what you're working on. And then Jennifer is here sort of helping us and coordinating a lot of things of the day. So also do reach out to her if you have any challenges. So Chris, do you want to kind of go over the event engine stuff and make sure people have got, you know, the things they need? And what we'll do is we'll get ourselves started now, and then if anyone's got any problems, we can sort of get those resolved pretty quickly. So over to you, Chris.
Yep, I'm just going to try sharing my screen now. Can you see my screen?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Yeah, as Stephen said, we're going to get hands-on with some of the technologies and actually get a chance to play around with them and see how they can be used for media workloads. Just before that, I think what we're going to do is get people logged in and get set up with accounts. And then if there's any problems with that, we can resolve those while I'm giving a bit of a presentation and introduction to some of the technologies you're going to use now. So if you want to fire up your favorite web browser and connect to the URL above. Is it easier if I paste that
Paste
into
it in the chat, maybe?
You should be greeted by an event engine page that will ask you to log into to use your Amazon login to connect to there, and then you should be able to use the event hash displayed on the page here to connect into a session and get yourself an account.
Can you paste those two into the chat, please, Chris?
Yeah, I'm just grabbing that one now. So I'm just trying to find where Zoom's put my chat client now.
Always puts it somewhere funny.
Yeah, it's moved it around.
Probably be somewhere up in the top. Or if anybody, or you could just stop sharing for a second, then put
Yeah, I might have to do that.
and start sharing again.
It's oh, there you go. It's in the sub menu that's hidden off screen now. That's the one. So you'll want to navigate to this URL.
You've managed to get to that URL and add the event hash. Can I get you to use a reaction, do like a thumbs up reaction on the using the reactions bar on Zoom, just to make sure that people are good. Charlotte's managed to do it. Let's see if others have managed to get it. You just give the thumbs up. That's great.
Okay.
Anyone's got any problems, then feel free to put your hand up or use the hand up in Zoom or I think there's a nice emoji, the open mouth one, which I'm just going to put on my screen. If you've got any problems, you can put that emoji up and we'll come and help you separately.
Yeah, I think Peter and Ra can coordinate that behind the scenes and just check that we've got the people who've got accounts, etc.
Everyone's got problems.
Accounts, we can provision some of those while this is ongoing. Yeah, see people looking in.
Are we asking people to rename the accounts, Chris, or?
Yeah, they can do. You can put your own name in there, and it might help us with providing assistance later on if we need to log into those accounts. So you should have the option to fill out your name in there, and then you can press the send button, and then we can authorize those ones. Can you see people connecting in, Ra?
Yeah, we have roughly 10 people in.
Okay, well, I'll give it a little bit longer. Well, I tell you what, I'll start running through this session, and people can continue on there, and we can check back in a bit later on.
Oh, I see event not running. Is that the wrong hash ID I've put?
Yeah, we will start the event in a minute.
Okay.
You can claim the account without the event being started.
Okay.
Well, while that's going on, I'll start talking. Just save on any overrun later on, and we'll get you hands-on with some of those tools as soon as we can. So I suppose we've already talked about how technology has enabled a lot of the media you watch on a daily basis. And I think the current circumstances have meant that technology's been really critical in enabling media production to continue in ways that it previously couldn't. We've talked about remote editing and remote production that's been a necessity because of COVID recently. So today we're going to get the chance to get hands-on and build a full-stack ride-sharing app using some of AWS's serverless technologies. I'm going to spend the first 15 minutes or so just to give you a bit of an introduction to the workshop and some of the technologies you'll be using to build with. I'll try and keep the presentation to a minimum and get you hands-on in those workshops as soon as we can. I think it's really important, just a few points before we start. I think it's really important. We've got a range of experience levels. I'm sure for many of you, the number of new technologies we're going to touch on today might seem a bit daunting or overwhelming. I'd really like to offer some reassurance there. I've been using some of these tools for over 5 years now. I'm still learning new things every day. At the same time, our development teams are continually announcing new features and services. And it really is impossible for one person to know it all. And so it's important to kind of look at the bits that interest you and build from there. But certainly don't be of the expectation that everyone around you knows it all. Just move at your own pace. And it's really important to try and take the time and understand those things. So before we start building our own apps, it's helpful to understand a bit of background on the serverless technologies we're going to be using in the labs, but to really appreciate that the benefits of serverless, it's quite useful to understand a bit about what computing looked like prior to this shift. So developers and engineers kind of love to solve problems, and they often build applications to do that. But running these applications hasn't always been straightforward. It was very easy for developers to spend more time building and maintaining complex infrastructure than working on the apps themselves. And historically, companies bought and ran their own hardware, and that meant having to forecast or guess how much compute capacity they would need in the coming years, and then persuade the businesses to make a large investment to buy and run that hardware for years to come. And this was a really complicated and error-prone process. If you overestimate demand, the business ends up spending lots of money unnecessarily, and that compute sits there idle. But if you don't buy enough, their applications might not run, and they might not have enough capacity to meet the demands of their customers. Raise your hand if you've ever tried to use a website or an app and found it just won't load. It's quite a commonplace. And because of the difficulty making those forecasts, it could take months to get approval to buy new hardware, which in turn dramatically slowed the rate developers could innovate and ship products and features to customers. And once they had that hardware, they had to keep it running, install the latest software updates, and rent space in a data center or a facility to put it in. So along came virtual machines, and they help with some of those challenges. You could now run multiple virtual machines on the same hardware, which is more efficient. And it also meant that resources could be requested in minutes or hours, assuming they were there, which significantly improved the kind of multi-month timeline that you had before. And developers didn't need to worry so much about the hardware their applications were running on. They were presented with a consistent environment to develop in. But the business still had to forecast how much of that hardware they would need to run all those virtual machines and purchase the hardware before they ran out of capacity. So the next big innovation, something you might have heard of, was containers. And this abstracted things even further from the underlying hardware. So with a container, a developer could write and package an application in a way that would allow it to run on any platform. It provides a kind of self-contained environment with all the dependencies needed to run that application. It describes how it should be built and run. And you could even take a container that someone else has built, or you can even take your container and give it to someone else to run for you, and they could run it on their own hardware. And this was a revelation for developers. They didn't need to need their own hardware or to be air conditioning experts or to be able to crawl around in the floor spaces running cabling. Someone else could worry about running the hardware, and they could focus on writing the code and building the applications. And this in turn led to more innovation. And environments meant that developers could run up a container in seconds, which meant that applications could start to respond to users in real time, or real-time user demand. It also brought about economies of scale. By running applications for lots of businesses on the same hardware, they could achieve much better utilization and share the costs of that really expensive hardware across all of its users. So now we arrive at serverless computing and the tools that we're going to be building with today. I'd say these are the tools that really inspired me and lots of other developers. They've been a really dramatic shift and represent a really different approach to computing. Instead of having an application that sits there waiting for someone to use it, you now have an environment that automatically scales up to service customer requests. And then it turns itself off again when it's done. So instead of paying for a server or a container to sit there waiting for a user to request it, AWS Lambda and AWS Fargate quickly spin up those applications when they're needed, and they only charge you for the time it's spent running. And this is measured in the case of Lambda, fractions of a second. So as a developer, you don't need to worry about running the hardware or patching operating systems or how to handle the failure of some underlying hardware component. These automated services take the code you've written and deploy it for your users to access it. And then they'll scale up and down that application as needed. So for me, the best thing about it was that I could move quickly. I didn't need to worry about building out a hardware stack or working out how to deploy it. I could focus on the problems at hand and have these managed services take care of that heavy lifting for me. So one of the main tenets of serverless is this idea of no server management. You don't have to worry about the hardware, and you don't have to worry about provisioning, updating it, and maintaining it. And flexible scaling, as I noted, the applications scale up and down based on user demand, and you don't have to worry about provisioning new hardware to do so. High availability, so we'll always make sure that your code is running and spread that across lots of physical computers to make sure it's a single hardware failure doesn't take out your whole application stack. So again, one less thing for you to worry about. And the idea of having no idle capacity is really crucial. You think you can start out small and you're not paying for all that wasted time that you would be with traditional hardware. So we move on to some of the trends. As always happens when creative people face challenges, they find new ways of doing things. And so we've seen rather than having to be an expert in every tool you use, we can use managed services that allow you to make use of them while someone else takes care of the day-to-day maintenance. And we've got microservices, the rise in popularity of microservices. They've become a really common approach to development. Having one big or monolithic application can become really complicated to work on, as lots of people have to coordinate with each other to make sure they don't break each other's code. By breaking an application down into smaller manageable chunks or microservices, it can make development and deployment and day-to-day operation much easier. And we've seen the rise of different ways of processing data. So stream and parallel processing are patterns for processing data. With stream processing, rather than writing data to a file and then uploading it when we're done, we actually send a continuous stream of data and process it as it arrives. So you've got much less of a wait before you can start doing processing that data. And this means we can do things in real time. We don't have to wait. And parallel processing is another pattern. Rather than working on one really big file and having a single application run through it line by line, many problems can be split into smaller chunks worked on at the same time. So we can have multiple parallel applications all working on that at the same time on different bits of data. And this means they can complete the job a lot faster. And one of the patterns that I really like is this idea of event-based infrastructure. So rather than having a traditional application where things are running permanently and when a user requests something, you trigger something to happen, we can couple things together so that when a certain event occurs, we can go and run a process coupled alongside that. And that allows us to build out these really scalable applications. So AWS Lambda is one of the technologies that we're going to be using primarily today. And it works, you bring along your code, and that can be written in a number of kind of major supported languages, and you can even run your own runtime containers as well now. And you can write your own libraries, etc. to do that. Sorry, is there a question? And you've got a simple resource model. You don't have to worry about lots of complex configuration. You just pick how much memory you're going to need, and CPU and network get allocated proportionally. You've got things like flexible invocation paths and these event-based models. And you can also go through and add really fine-grained levels of permission. So when we get into things like security concepts of least privilege, you can really narrow down what each of those lambdas is able to access and able to do. So we're going to touch on one of the things we are going to use today is something called Amazon API Gateway, which is a fully managed service that allows developers to create and publish APIs. So an API is kind of a front door to an application to access data, business logic, or some functionality from back-end services. And so we can use that to allow customers access to from our web app to execute your Lambda functions. An API gateway can be used as a router to direct requests to relevant back-end services, but it also allows you to do things like host multiple versions and stages of an API. So if you can use versioning and stages can be leveraged to allow you to deploy updates to your web app without interrupting users that may be using the existing version. So it's really useful when it comes to building bigger, more mature applications. And you can use it to do things like secure and throttle traffic to the back-end services as well. So you can make sure that only authorized users are allowed to access it, and you can help to deal with spikes in demand and prevent them from overwhelming back-end services there as well. We'll briefly touch on the Amplify console. So that's that lets you deploy your web applications much faster, and another managed service that helps you orchestrate the development practices that you're going to be using today. We're going to make use of by connecting our code repository to the Amplify console, and that's going to give us a workflow for deploying all the changes that you're going to make today. And another one of the technologies you'll use is Amazon DynamoDB. Amazon DynamoDB is a kind of fast and flexible database that allows you to build a whole range of applications right the way through from very simple get and put type data patterns all the way up to really complex applications that use event-based triggers and streams and allow you to do things like distribute your data store across the world. It actually backs a lot of the Amazon retail things, functionality like the shopping basket, and so it's able to scale up to very, very high request loads. So it can be really, really useful when you're building applications that you want to be able to scale to many, many users. I'll run through these quickly as we'll go into more detail in them in the labs. But Amazon Cognito provides a really simple and secure way of implementing user sign-up and authentication for your application. Today we'll be implementing our own user pools, which will allow you to log into your app. But you can also use things like Amazon Cognito to implement something called Federated Identities. I'm sure you've seen on lots of websites the concept where you can use the credentials from another provider like Facebook or Twitter to enable users to connect to another site. So this can often help lower the barrier to entry and make people more willing to kind of sign up, as it's kind of a lower friction process. So Amazon Cognito is another managed service, but so that we don't have to worry about running that infrastructure ourselves. And as you'll find in the console later on, you'll see there's options for things like enabling verification emails and phone numbers, so you can secure that sign-up process and make sure that people are providing valid details and aren't giving you fake credentials, etc. So the scenario for today. Welcome to Wild Rides, the world's first unicorn ride-hailing service. So we're going to build an application today to help us disrupt transportation and launch the world's first unicorn ride-sharing service. Download the app, request a unicorn, pick a price, and ride off to success. Well, it looks like the marketing team have already got started, but they don't yet have any developers. So welcome employee number 3. This is where you take over. We're going to start off building a web app today and build our own unicorn ride-hailing app. Just before we get started, I just wanted to note one correction we found during the run-throughs. You might find that the visuals on the Amplify console have changed slightly. The instructions will tell you to click the Get Started button under the Deploy button, and the heading has since changed to Deliver. So just in case anyone runs into issues there. But as I say, if you do run into any issues, just let us know. We'll be in the chat helping out. Ra, are you able to click Start on the event for me, please? While that's going on, I just wanted to stress to everyone, it's really important that everyone works at their own pace. There's lots of different experience levels here, and it's really important to kind of take the time to understand what you're doing rather than just race to the end. If there's something you don't understand, please ask. There's probably a number of other people in the breakout room with you that are all wondering the same thing. We'll be separating you out into smaller groups for the lab sessions. So we'll go off into Zoom rooms and there'll be someone in there that can help with those questions. If you're feeling shy about posting to the group, I'm sure you'll be able to ask those questions directly to the person helping out. And as I say, you may not complete all of the sections of these labs today. The important thing is you take the time, spend some time getting hands-on, building it, and hopefully have some fun along the way. And as I say, there's a lot of new technologies here and it can seem really daunting. So just take it at your own pace, find the bits that interest you, and spend some time with those. The instructions will guide you through selecting a region. I would suggest make sure you select US East 1 as part of that. It does save some confusion later on. And don't worry about the last step about cleaning up. If you leave your application running, you can revisit it if you have a bit of time left at the end today before we wrap up. So with that, I think we'll go get started. You can jump into your environments.
Yeah, the event has been started, so they should be able to log in.
Okay. Are you able to paste that guide URL into the chat for me, Rob?
What URL? Sorry, Chris.
It should be an equip. If I can pause the screen share 2 seconds.
And we'll copy these into each of the rooms. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to allocate everybody into breakout rooms. Hopefully everyone will be allocated. If you don't get allocated and you end up staying in this room, just let me know and I'll get you moved into a room. I've tried to also put somebody who's going to be able to support you. So Peter we've got Ra, we've got Chris, we've got Mount. Those will also be hopefully allocated in each of the rooms. So if you've got any problems, they are there to help you out. We will keep going on the workshop. Sort of, we allocated to sort of have lunch around 1:15, but you obviously can work into lunch if you want to. But if you could make sure everyone joins back at 2:15, I will actually bring everyone back into this main room at that time, but you can obviously have your lunch and other stuff during that point. So I'll open all the rooms. If you have any questions, do use the people. Let's get interactive. Let's have a play with this. And if you're wondering why on earth we're doing anything to do with unicorns and websites, well, actually the important point here is that this is a technology set that's really, really important for media workflows. You saw us using a lot of web technologies when I did my demonstration stuff for the Adobe Premiere panel, stuff for importing into Zoom. These are all really important technologies. And so if you're using Lambda functions, you don't have to worry about all that server stuff, but you also can keep your costs low. And that is really, really important if you're going to build an application to really optimize it so that when people are not using it, it's not costing you any money. And that's really, really important as well. So that's why we're using this particular workshop, because we think that in terms of the future of ways in which people will work in the cloud and with media entertainment, Lambda and Lambda functions are going to be a really important part of it. So I'm going to put everyone into a room. If you don't end up in a room, I will see you here still, and we'll get you into a room. So see you in a moment.